Content repurposing is the most effective way to squeeze every last drop of quality out of your content, but it's not a one-person job. This is why you should encourage a content repurposing mindset in your team. Listen on for tips on why, what that means, and how to achieve it. You're listening to the Content 10x podcast, where it's all about content repurposing. I'm Amy Woods, and I'm here to help you maximize your content and find smart ways to get your message in front of more of the right people, whilst also saving time. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Content 10x podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, the founder and CEO of Content 10x, and in this episode, I'm going to be talking about how you can encourage a content repurposing mindset in your team. Now, like many things in life, mindset is so important. I believe the right mindset, not just for you, but for your team, will ensure content repurposing is top of mind when it comes to your content marketing plan. So in this episode, I'm going to cover what I mean by a content repurposing mindset, when to start thinking about content repurposing, and how to instill that content repurposing mindset in your team. Now, before I get to the main content, just to mention, we're so excited to have launched the Content 10x Repurposing Effectiveness Scorecard. If you want to find out how your content repurposing strategy and efforts compare to others and get specific tips and advice on how to improve, then look no further than our scorecard. It's free, it's 21 quickfire questions, and it takes less than 3 minutes. So just head to content10x.com/scorecard and see how you get on. Now, in last week's episode 255, called How to Develop Systems and Processes for Content Repurposing, I talked about how having systems in place is really important for effective repurposing. In fact, I don't think it can be effective without them. So if you haven't listened to it, then do go and listen to episode 255. So go to content10x.com/255 for more on that, because these two episodes kind of go hand in hand. So along with your systems and processes, successful content repurposing needs the right mindset. And if you're wondering what a content repurposing mindset actually is, this certainly isn't the first time I've spoken about it. I absolutely love talking about the content repurposing mindset. In fact, one of my main keynotes that I've delivered on stages around the world and at virtual events is called the Content Repurposing Mindset. And I've shared a podcast episode on this as well. So head on over to content10x.com/114 for the episode. It's called, unsurprisingly, the Content Repurposing Mindset, or just go ahead and read the blog post at that link. It will really help to have further understanding before we talk about instilling this mindset into your team. Now, I often talk about why I believe that repurposing begins at the planning stage of content creation. In fact, that's like my mantra. You'll hear me say, create content with repurposing in mind, or, repurposing starts at the planning phase. It's so important to remember. If you create content with repurposing in mind, then your core content will be tailored towards it, and you'll have so many more opportunities to maximize that original piece that you've spent so much time on in the first place. Now, it's not just about creating with repurposing in mind, but it's also just about looking at what you already have too, and how could you repurpose it. So taking on a content repurposing mindset involves being able to view content in a different way and always look for opportunities to do more with it. However, if you are the only one in your team who is thinking like this, then it makes the whole process a lot more difficult and can jeopardize the impact your repurposed content ultimately has. So we want to instill this repurposing mindset into our marketing and content teams. Here are my 4 top tips on how to do this. So number 1 is reward and recognition. It sounds obvious, but if you want to instill a repurposing focus in your team, then ask yourself, how often do you publicly recognise the repurposing behaviours that you want to see more of? So it's a great idea to do things like shout outs in your team meetings to recognise those who are practicing repurposing effectively. You could share examples of great content repurposing from within your team, but also share great examples from outside your company as well to inspire your team, your colleagues, your employees to repurpose content. At Content 10X, we've introduced in our weekly team meeting shout-outs where we just go ahead and recognise the work of somebody else or the actions of somebody else, and it's really lifted the spirits of the team even more so. It's a great thing to do, and like I said, if you want to see more content repurposing, then make it a part of that recognition, make it a part of team shout-outs, and make sure that you are publicly recognising and rewarding those behaviours. So number 2 leads quite nicely on, and that's to include content repurposing in your team's performance objectives. So still on the theme of reward and recognition. So if you and your team set weekly or monthly goals or objectives, add a repurposing related one to give everyone something clear and documented to work towards. So do this at an individual level and at a team level as well. Maybe it's, for example, to repurpose 4 videos into blog posts, or to edit clips from your video podcast into TikToks, Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, whatever it may be. And if you're not there yet with those kind of very specific actions of repurposing, then maybe it's laying the foundations first and putting into people's performance objectives the planning that they need to do. And then the next set of objectives for the month after will be down to the action that needs to be taken. If you think about it this way, if you don't set objectives, then how can you expect it and how can you measure it? So get setting them. Of course, we do want to make sure that people are getting the appropriate training. If you make repurposing a major part of training for new starters and existing colleagues as well, then you're going to really instill this mentality throughout all areas of the team to have that repurposing mindset. But like I said, we've got more to talk about on training in another episode here. We're looking more at the actions you can take to instill that repurposing mindset in your team. We'll look at training separately. So number 3 is to make sure that content repurposing is high on the agenda when planning content. Now this directly links to what I said earlier about how content repurposing starts at the planning stage. You'll be able to find so many more opportunities for repurposing if you create content with repurposing in mind. Our fantastic clients, TechSmith, have actually mentioned to me before that when they plan content, they'll say around the office, can you content 10x that? And I absolutely love this. It's a great example of a team really coming together and thinking of how they can repurpose content and challenging each other. But I really love how they use the term content 10x as a verb to mean maximize and repurpose. Now, they don't actually mean every time they say that, can we work with content 10x? I wish they did. But they're just saying, can we content 10x that? To mean, can we repurpose that? Can we make the most of it? Which I think is fantastic. And here's a tip on creating content with repurposing in mind. So that would be to create repurposable segments. Now, back in May 2022, I recorded an episode on segmenting your content to really maximize the repurposing possibilities. Head to content10x.com/238 to hear that episode. It's called How to Segment Your Content for Ultimate Repurposing with Lessons from TV Talk Shows. Segmenting your content may be by creating a weekly strand of video content from a main longer form video, or taking a daily tip for email subscribers, or many other examples. But what it can do is it can help you to grow separate audiences for the segments as well as for your main content as well. So that's a real cool benefit of creating memorable, consistent, repurposed segments from main content. Either way, it's all about the more quality content, then the more repurposing possibilities there will be. Now, it's not always about creating something new. Sometimes the biggest mistake content teams make is that they go and create new content when they have content that already exists that they could work with. It's often all too easy to go into create mode. So instead, when you are at those planning meetings, you need to ask yourself, have we created anything about this topic before? Should we review it first and see if it's relevant? Do we just need to repurpose something we already have? Do we need to update and improve something we already have? You need to ensure these factors become the norm for discussion when planning out your content. So make them firm on the agenda, whether you're discussing updating or repurposing something that already exists, or whether you're discussing whether you can repurpose something that you haven't created yet and you're in that planning phase. Feel free to use the term content 10x like TechSmith do. So ask yourself, how will we content 10x this? So number 4, the final tip for ways in which you can instill a content repurposing mindset into your team is to recruit for it. If you're looking for new team members, go on the hunt for people who have an interest, desire, or experience in content repurposing. If you hire somebody who already knows the process and why it works so well, they could be a great addition to your team and really bring out that mindset in everybody else too. But if they don't have the experience yet, they might still have the desire and that mindset. So find ways to assess that in your interview and selection process. Do they show an affinity and desire for repurposing, for making things go further, for seeing the potential in content? They're the kind of things that you want to be looking at when you're assessing new people to come and join your content marketing team. So really, I've made it clear that if you want to see more of something in your team, ensure it's incorporated in your selection and hiring processes and also your reward and recognition processes as well. So that's it for this week's episode, how to encourage a content repurposing mindset in your team. I really hope that this has encouraged you to promote that repurposing mindset, and all the links I mentioned will be in the show notes, so do go check those out. Now, if you want someone to take the repurposing off your hands, we can help. We offer fully done for you end-to-end content repurposing services, whether that's for your podcast or video series, or maybe it's for an event in person or virtual. We've got you covered. Just head to content10x.com/services to find out more about how we can help you. Be sure to follow us on social media. Just find Content 10x on all the social platforms, or go over to LinkedIn and connect with me, Amy Woods, and let me know that you are a listener to the podcast. So all that's left to say is thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.